Hi everybody, and how are you doing today? This is Dr. Bev Knox, and this is another episode of your Psychology Exam Study Buddy with me, Dr. Bev Knox. Anyway, this is episode 22. I can't believe we've gotten to 22 already. This is all about basic motivational concepts and also achievement. All right, so let's just dive right in. Let's get started. All right, so with basic motivational concepts, I want you to first know the definition of motivation. Motivation is a need or desire that energizes and directs behavior. Motivation is a need or desire that energizes and directs behavior. So our motivations arise from the interplay between nature and nurture. And I'm sure you guys remember what nurture means because we went over that in a previous episode. So nature is anything to do with one's biological or genetic makeup. And nurture is environmental influences that affect behavior. And some of our nurture comes directly from personal experiences, thoughts, and culture. Okay? All right. So our motives drive our behavior. Our motives drive our behavior. That is usually, but not always, for the better. If our motivations get hijacked, our lives go awry. Now, for those with substance use disorder, for example, may find their cravings for an addictive substance override their longings for sustenance, safety, and social support. So in their attempts to understand behavior, like motivated behavior, psychologists have viewed it from 4 perspectives, okay? So they're trying to understand what motivates behavior, these psychologists. And they put it all together and they view it from 4 different perspectives. You have the instinct theory, the drive reduction theory, arousal theory, and Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we're going to go over today, by the way. All right. So instinct theory, which is now replaced by the evolutionary perspective. Remember when we went over the 5 major models in psychology, right? All the different perspectives. So models is just another name for perspectives or, schools of thought, for example. So it used to be called instinct theory, and now it's replaced by evolutionary perspective, which focuses on genetically predisposed behavior. Genetically predisposed behavior. So since I know you're a smart cookie, because you have to, learn to read in between the lines of these definitions. So if instinct theory, it's now called what? Evolutionary theory. If it focuses on genetically predisposed behavior, is that nature or is that nurture? Think about it. It focuses on genetically predisposed behavior. That would be the nature perspective, right? Because the nature perspective is all about what? Biological or genetic or genetics influences on behavior, right? So instinct theory, now called what? Evolutionary perspective, focuses on genetically predisposed behaviors. So you need to know the definition of instinct, first of all. Instinct is a complex behavior that is rigidly patterned throughout a species and is unlearned. That is huge. It is unlearned. So we'll get back to instinct in a minute. So instinct theory, now replaced by evolutionary perspective, focuses on genetically predisposed behavior. Drive reduction theory focuses on how we respond to our inner pushes. I'll explain these more in detail in a little bit, but I just wanted you to grasp that psychologists understand motivation in these four different perspectives. Instinct theory, drive reduction theory, which focuses on how we respond to our inner pushes. Arousal theory focuses on finding the right level of stimulation. And Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs focuses on the priority of some needs over others. All right, so let's unpack these in a little bit more detail. All right, let's cover instincts and evolutionary theory first. So to qualify as an instinct, a complex behavior must have a fixed pattern throughout a species and be unlearned. That's a whole lot of stuff I just gave you. Okay, there's four different things. Complex behavior, that's one. Must have a fixed pattern, that's two. Throughout a species, three. Not just one, but the whole species, that's three. And it must be unlearned, four. To qualify as an instinct, so you have to know the definition of instinct, right? A complex behavior that is rigidly patterned throughout a species and is unlearned. And make sure you underline, highlight, write down unlearned, because in most, psychology exam, when given the definition of, whether it's true and false or what have you, that word unlearn would be written learned. Okay? So be careful. It has to be unlearned. Such unlearned behaviors include imprinting in birds and the return of salmon to their birthplace. Now, a few human behaviors, such as infants' innate reflexes to root for a nipple and suck, for example, also exhibit unlearned fixed patterns. So instinct theory, was very popular in the early 20th century, viewed our instincts as the source of our motivation. Don't forget, this episode is all about, basic motivational concepts. So instinct theory, again, when was it popular? The early 20th century, that's right. And it viewed our basic instincts as the source of what? Of our motivation. But many more behaviors are directed by both physiological needs and psychological wants. So that would be both needs and wants. So a physiological need is a basic bodily requirement. A physiological need is a basic bodily requirement. What is a physiological need? A basic bodily requirement. Very good. So although instincts cannot explain most human motives, the underlying assumption endures in evolutionary psychology. Genes do predispose some species typical behavior. Psychologists apply this perspective for example, to explain our human similarities, animals' biological predispositions, and the influence of evolution on our phobias, for example, our helping behaviors, and our romantic attractions. Okay, so drive reduction theory, let's dive into that, is the idea that a physiological need creates an aroused state, which is the same thing as a drive, that motivates an organism to satisfy the need. So, drive reduction theory is the idea that a physiological need creates an aroused state, which is the same thing as a drive, that motivates an organism to satisfy the need. Okay? So let's back up a little bit. Let's back up. What is instinct theory? Because I'm going to be quizzing you a little bit throughout this, okay? So instinct theory, when was it popular? In the early 20th century. It viewed our instincts as the source of our motivation. But many more behaviors are directed by both physiological needs and psychological wants. Okay? So that was instinct theory. But now in regards to drive reduction theory. So in addition to the predispositions of instinct theory, we have drives, physical needs, physiological needs such as food or water, create an aroused motivational state. A drive such as hunger or thirst that pushes us to reduce the need. Okay, so we're talking about drives and incentives now, okay? Under the second of the four, the first being instinct theory, the second being drive reduction theory. So physiological needs is a basic bodily requirement. Physiological needs such as what? Food or water create an aroused, motivated state, which is a drive, such as hunger or thirst, that pushes us to reduce the need. Okay? Drive reduction theory is the idea that a physiological need creates an aroused state, which is a drive, that motivates an organism to satisfy the need. Drive reduction theory explains that, with few exceptions, when a physiological need increases, so does our psychological drive to reduce it. Drive reduction theory explains that, with few exceptions, when a physiological need increases, and what are physiological needs? Such as what? Food or water, okay? So when a physiological need increases, so does our psychological drive to reduce it. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So drive reduction is one way our bodies strive for, and here's a term to know, okay? Homeostasis. Know that term. H-O-M-E. So homeo, H-O-M-E-O-S-T-A-T-I-S-T-A-S-I-S. You need to know this, right? Literally staying the quote unquote staying the same. So homeostasis is the tendency to maintain a balanced or consistent internal state, the regulation of any aspect of body chemistry, such as blood glucose, around a particular level. Okay? So homeostasis literally means just staying the same, the maintenance of a steady internal state. For example, our body regulates its temperature in a way similar to a room's thermostat, for example. Both systems operate through feedback loops. Sensors feed room temperature to control a device. And our body pretty much is the same thing, okay? So likewise, if our body temperature cools, our blood vessels constrict to conserve warmth, and we feel driven to put on more clothes or seek a warmer environment. So homeostasis is the tendency to maintain a balanced or constant internal state, the regulation of any aspect of body chemistry, such as blood glucose, around a particular level. Now, an incentive is a positive or negative environmental stimulus that motivates behavior. So not only are we pushed by our need to reduce drives. What are drives again? Do you remember? Yes, you do. Think hard. What are drives? You are correct. I'm so proud of you. So we do have drives, right? And it could be physiological, it could be psychological, but really it puts us in an aroused, motivated state, okay? The drive itself it pushes us to reduce the need. So whatever it is, it pushes us to reduce the need per se, okay? So again, not only are we pushed by our need to reduce drives, we also are pulled by incentives, which are positive or negative environmental stimuli that lure us to repel, okay? So an incentive is a positive or negative environmental stimulus that motivates behavior. It motivates us, okay? Given such stimuli, our underlying drives, such as for food or sex, for example, become active impulses. It's like we have to have it, we have to have it. And the more those impulses are satisfied and reinforced. Oh, here's that word, reinforced. We covered that word reinforcement when we talked about learning. When we talked about operant conditioning, for example, it was all about rewards and punishment. And if a particular behavior is rewarded, the likelihood of that behavior continuing has what? It has been what? Increased. So when you reinforce something, when you reinforce a behavior, the likelihood of that behavior occurring again has been what? Increased. So when we're talking about these impulses, okay, the more these impulses are satisfied and reinforced, the stronger the drive may become. And that's just something you got to know. So when there is both a need and an incentive, we feel strongly driven, okay? The food-deprived person who smells pizza bacon may feel a strong hunger drive, and the bacon pizza may become a compelling incentive. For each motive, we can therefore ask, how is it pushed by our inborn physiological needs and pulled by our learned incentives in the environment? Oh, that was good stuff, right? So we've covered instinct theory, and instinct theory is now replaced by what? Evolutionary perspective, and it focuses on what? Genetically predisposed behaviors. So we've covered instinct theory. We just covered drive reduction theory. And drive reduction theory focuses on how what? Drive reduction theory focuses on how we respond to our inner pushes. And now we're moving on to arousal theory. And arousal theory focuses on finding the right level of stimulation. So we are much more than homeostatic systems. And you remember what that word means? I just said homeostatic, but it could also mean homeostasis, the tendency to maintain a balanced or constant eternal state, the regulation of any aspect of body chemistry, such as blood glucose around a particular level. So that's homeostasis, S-I-S. But we are much more than homeostatic, T-I-C, systems, right? So some motivated behaviors actually increase rather than decrease arousal. Well-fed animals will leave their shelter to explore and gain information, seemingly in the absence of any need-based drive. So with arousal theory, it focuses on finding the right level of stimulation. So although they have been called sensation seekers, so the arousal theory folks, they've been called, sensation seekers. Risk takers may also be motivated by a drive to master their emotions and actions. That is something to know. So human motivation aims not to eliminate arousal, but to seek optimum levels of arousal. Having all our biological needs satisfied, we feel driven to experience stimulation. Lacking stimulation, we feel bored and look for a way to increase arousal. So don't forget, that's the third one, arousal theory, which focuses on finding the right level of stimulation. And now we are moving on to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which focuses on the priority of some needs over others. Now, it doesn't matter what psychology class you take, okay? But mostly intro to psychology and a lot of other psychologies always talk about Maslow hierarchy of needs. That's just something you need to staple in the back of your mind. Even a lot of motivational seminars and classes on highly successful people, or what are the habits of success in motivation, always reference Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So what exactly is this? All right, so hierarchy of needs is Maslow's pyramid of human needs, beginning at the base with physiological needs that must first be satisfied before higher level safety needs, and then psychological needs become active. This is very important to know. I'm going to go over Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but you have to know, especially in my courses, I always ask, what is Maslow's concept? What is his concept? And all this means is that lower level needs, remember, it's a triangle. So the needs at the bottom needs to be met before you could move on to the next need. That's his concept. Maslow's pyramid of human needs, beginning at the base, the bottom, with physiological needs that must first be met or satisfied before moving on to the next level, okay? So some needs take priority. And in this hierarchy of needs, again, which one comes first? Some needs take priority. At this moment, with your needs for air and water, hopefully it's satisfied. That's why you're alive. Other motives, such as your desire to learn and achieve, are energizing and directing your behavior. Your desire and your motivation to get an A in this class or to get an A in your psychology exam is motivating you to do what? What is it encouraging you and energizing you to do? To learn, to listen over and over, and to learn these concepts so you could do what? Get an A. That's it. Okay? So let your need for water go unsatisfied. However, and your thirst will preoccupy you. That would be, you just can't stop thinking about, oh my gosh, I need water, I need water, I need water, if you hadn't had water in a while, right? So again, if you go without water, if your need for water is unsatisfied, your thirst will preoccupy you, right? Deprived of air, you will find that your thirst disappears because all you will be thinking about, because you'll be gasping for air, is I can't breathe, I need air. So Abraham Maslow described these priorities as a hierarchy of needs. Now, before I continue, please note that the reason why professors would say according to Maslow, and I know I do, according to Maslow, these lower level needs must be met before moving on to the next. Because not everybody, not every psychologist agrees with Maslow's concept. So you have to understand this is according to Maslow. So at the base of this pyramid are our physiological needs, such as food and water. Only if these needs are met are we prompted to meet our need for safety. And when to satisfy our needs, for example, to give and receive love and to enjoy self-esteem. Beyond this, said Maslow, lies the need to actualize one's full potential. So let's go over the triangle, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the very bottom is physiological needs. And you have to know the name of each need and give examples of each need. So the very bottom, physiological needs. the need to satisfy hunger and thirst. Okay? And you'll see that sex is also there for procreation, the need to procreate. That's what it is. So sex is on here a couple of times, and you'll hear different professors say that. The physiological need for sex is there at the bottom, a physiological need. Okay? So the next step would be safety need. The need to feel that the world is organized and predictable. The need to feel safe, secure, and stable. So, for example, having a job for, a career, getting paid a certain amount of money that you could afford your rent or mortgage, food on your table, all that belongs under safety needs. Next level up is belongingness and love needs. All right, so belongingness and love and belongingness. It's the need to love and be loved, to belong and to be accepted. Need to avoid loneliness and separation. So Maslow's saying we have a need of love and belongingness. And only then, after we obtain that need, we could move on to esteem needs. The need for self-esteem. Of course, positive self-esteem, right? The need for self-esteem. Achievement, competence, and independence. The need for recognition and respect from others. That falls under esteem needs. And only then, after we've acquired our esteem needs, we move up to self-actualization needs. The need to live up to our fullest and unique potential. It's called self-actualization. Now, near the end of his life, Maslow proposed that some people also reach a level of self-transcendence. So in many psych courses and textbooks, they only talk about the needs from physiological needs to self-actualization. 5 needs, the 5 major needs. Okay? But toward the end of his life, Maslow added another one basically by saying, you know what? There's another one called self-transcendence needs. The need to find meaning and identify beyond the self. So again, at the end of his life, Maslow proposed that some people also reach a level of self-transcendence. At the self-actualization level, people seek to realize their own potential. At the self-transcendence level, people strive for meaning, purpose, and communion in a way that is transpersonal, beyond the self. Maslow's contemporary psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, for example, remember who that is? A Nazi concentration camp survivor, very famous, concurred that the search for meaning is an important human motive. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. All right, so again, hierarchy of needs is Maslow's pyramid of human needs, beginning at the base with physiological needs that must first be satisfied before higher level needs can be met. So we start off with physiological needs, then we move up to safety needs, then we move up to love and belongingness needs, then we move up to esteem needs, then we move up to self-actualization needs, and then we move up to self-transcendence needs. All right, so now let's shift focus a little bit and go over affiliation and achievement, okay? So affiliation need is the need to build relationships and to feel part of a group. Separated from friends or family, alone in prison or at a new school or in a foreign land, most people feel kinly. There are lost connections with important others. So we are what the Greek philosopher, remember the ancient Greek philosopher called Aristotle? So we are what he called the social animal. Without friends, wrote Aristotle, no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods. This deep need to belong, our quote-unquote affiliation need, seems a key human motivation. So it is indeed a key human motivation. And the Mark Zuckerberg, the one who founded Facebook, for example, said, to accomplish a social mission, we make the world more open and connected. Although people vary in their wish for privacy and solitude, most of us seek to affiliate, to become strongly attached to certain quote-unquote others in enduring close relationships. Human beings, contended personality theorist Alfred Adler, have a quote-unquote urge to community, is what he said. The affiliation need is the need to build relationships and to feel part of a group. Okay, let's move on to achievement motivation. All right? Achievement motivation is a desire for significant accomplishment, for mastery of skills or ideas, for control, and for attaining a high standard. Achievement motivation. You're listening to this episode because you want to learn more about motivation and achievement. Why? It could be for some personal development reason, but most likely because you are taking a psychology course and you want to learn more about this to pass your psychology course. Why? Because you have goals in mind. To pass your course, and passing this course would do what? Would add another class, whether it's a requirement or elective, to graduate. That's right. So a desire for significant accomplishment would be graduating from high school or college or graduate school. For mastery of skills or ideas. For control and for attaining a high standard. That is achievement motivation. Now, grit. Know what grit is. In psychology, grit means passion and perseverance in the pursuit of long-term goals. Again, grit, which other researchers have found similar to consciousness, not consciousness, but consciousness, attention and actions in the face of temptation. Gritty goal striving can produce great achievements. If you want to look good in front of thousands, the saying goes, you have to outwork thousands in front of nobody. Although intelligence is distributed like a bell curve, achievements are not. Remember, we talked about intelligence and what the bell-shaped curve is, right? And we talked about intelligence. The range is from 85 to 115, and most people are right there in the middle of that bell curve. Intelligence is distributed like a bell curve. Achievements are not. This tells us that achievement involves much more than raw ability. That is why smart parenting, teaching, and managing engages people intrinsic motivations to achieve, rather than focusing only on extrinsic motivation. That is why organizational psychologists seek ways to motivate ordinary people doing ordinary jobs. Okay, let's see. Let us talk about... Okay, I'm going to give you some ways now that each of us can adopt some research-based strategies for achieving our goals. I think probably this is the most important part of everything we've talked about today. It's great to know the theory of motivation. It's great to know the theory behind affiliation and achievement. It's one, you have to know that to pass the course. But how do you apply that in your own personal lives? Okay? And it's cool to get somebody's opinion on how to do so. But I like to get actual scientific research-based techniques and put that out to you guys. So let's talk about research-based strategies for achieving our goals. And there's 7 of them that we're going to talk about really quickly. Number 1, do make that resolution. Challenging goals motivate achievement. Concrete goals finish the paper by Tuesday or finish the paper by Wednesday is direct attention and motivate persistence. So make the goal, make the resolution. It's concrete goals. I want to accomplish this by that date. I want to get my associate's degree by the time I'm 22. Or I'm going back to school now. I'm 62. I want to get that associate's degree by the time I'm 65. You know what I mean? So make that resolution. All right. Number 2, announce the goal to friends or family. We're more likely to follow through after making a public commitment. So, sure, announce your goals. I'm going back to school, guys. I'm going to get my associate's degree. Make that goal and announce the goal. 3, develop an implementation plan. How are you going to do it? So, an action strategy that specifies when, where, and how we will progress towards our goal. People who flesh out goals with detailed plans become more focused and more likely to succeed. Better to center on small steps, the day's running target, and to fantasize the marathon. So what that means is that we need to set achievable goals. Don't say, it's not just about, I want to get my associate's degree. That's the major goal. I want to get my associate degree. Cool. But you need to come up with step by step strategizing exactly how you're going to obtain your goal. I'm going to take, 4 classes every semester for 2 years. Or I'm going to go part-time. I'm going to take 2 classes, but I'm going to go to summer sessions and winter sessions, and I'm still going to accomplish my goal by getting my degree in 2 years or even 18 months. Okay? All right. Let's move on to number 4. Monitor and record progress, perhaps aided by a tracker or a journal, for example. So you want to go ahead and write down your achievements. So monitor and record progress, okay? And that's majorly important because you need to give yourself that data boy, that pat on the back every time you accomplish, one of those steps to obtain your goal. Oh my goodness, I've done with semester 1. I only have 3 more semesters to go. Yay, let's celebrate. I'm done with semester 2. I only have 2 more semesters to go. Yay, let's celebrate. Okay? All right. Number 5, create a supportive environment. When trying to eat healthy, keep junk food out of the cupboards. Use small plates and bowls. When trying to graduate with your associate degree, you have to create a supportive environment. That means what? You may want a little desk if you don't have an office at home, buy a little desk and put your textbooks on that desk with your laptop. You don't have a desk? Fine. Get a cardboard box and put a piece of wood on it and then throw a nice little sheet over that, or tablecloth or something to make it look pretty. Put your books on there. You need to do what? Create a supportive environment. Okay? 6, transform the hard-to-do behavior into a must-do habit. You know what? I have a whole series of lectures on habits to success. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include this in the description below, okay? So I'm going to add below the playlist for habits for success. So again, number 6 is to transform the quote-unquote hard-to-do behavior into the quote-unquote must-do habit. Habits form when we repeat behaviors in a given context. As our behavior becomes linked with the context, our next experience of that context invokes our habitual response. To increase our self-control, to connect our resolutions with positive outcomes. So habits could be either negative or positive. And we don't want to adopt negative habits. We don't, because you will never achieve your goals. So we want to go ahead and, have you form positive habits that's going to contribute to you obtaining your goals. Okay? So again, number 6 is to transform the hard-to-do behavior into the must-do habits. Number 7 is to achieve important life goals. We often know what to do, We know that a full night's sleep boosts our alertness, energy, and mood. We know that exercise lessens depression and anxiety, sculpts our body, and strengthens our hearts and mind. We know that we put into our bodies junk food or balanced nutrition. Now, we know all this, but between the idea and the reality, the steps we take actually would do what? Depict the outcome. All right? So we can create a bridge between the idea and the reality. So number 7 is to achieve important life goals. And if, again, our goal is to obtain our associate degree, we need to do what? Every time we climb up a step, we're looking up at that ladder or the staircase, and our goal is right up there. Every time we climb one step, we give ourselves a pat on the back and we keep on going. We keep on going until we achieve our goals. Okay, well, that's it. We are done with this episode. So we're done with episode 22, all about basic motivational concepts and achievement. Thank you for spending some time with me today. And in our next episode, episode 23, it's all about what? All about the questions and answers for you to ace your psychology exam. Okay, guys, I will see you in the next episode.